to review the papers this Sunday. Janelle, let's start with the Observer, shall we? Because there isn't a day when we're not talking about anarchy in the Tory party, and many will say, you know, this isn't a good look ahead of a general election next year.
No, it definitely isn't a good look ahead of a general election if a party wants to win, that is. I think the Tories used to have a reputation for banding together to win things, but now they seem to be splintering and splintering. And I'm old enough to remember just a couple of years ago when they were definitely trying to get Boris out, and now they're saying they were wrong to get Boris out. And people like Priti Patel at this fringe event saying that, you know, they were wrong to get Boris out, that, you know, he appeared via video link. It's all very Trump-esque and Republican Party-esque in terms of him rebranding himself and still trying to get power back. You know, I think most sensible who I would call sensible people would say that this is not the way to go if you want to win an election. You have to kind of band together. Now, I'm not advocating for them to win the next election in that sense, but I guess what I'm saying is it seems strange that the party who have given us multiple leaders via undemocratic means, in terms of the fact that it's within their own party they've selected, in fact, the last 4 prime ministers they've done that to us with, are now saying that potentially that they've done it, that because they've done it now, it's suddenly wrong. But it seems like it's wrong because they want something different. I think it's really interesting, but what I do think it shows is that their focus is on themselves and not on us, the public, which is something that I think it should be in the next year, because we've got massive issues. So that this has become a big shows their inward lookingness and not their outward facing look, which should be on the general public and we're facing.
The return of Boris. Watch this space. Kate, should we talk about this story that you picked out about a 40-year mortgage? You know, people waiting later to get mortgages, and then they're spreading it across periods of time so that the repayments are a bit lower.
Absolutely. We've got to get reform when it comes to the housing situation. We've heard housing crisis mooted a lot, but that's the truth of it.
Yeah.
We've got many people that can't get on to the property ladder. We've got a renting crisis because we've got a shortage of properties. And then in this reality, when you do get a mortgage, if you're fortunate enough to get one, and credit to Skipton Building Society, which I was reading about in this article and others, who have created an opportunity for renters to be able to use the proof of rent in the process of applying for a mortgage, which is, you know, common sense. This is where we need reform. You might therefore be taking on a mortgage later in life, which means to get an affordable mortgage, it could potentially be 40 years, and therefore you might be in your 70s before you're at a point of paying it off. Now, of course, a lot of the financial providers are hoping as you mature in life and perhaps have available income that you might be able to pay that off sooner, or you might be able to pay bigger payments in lump sums. But the reality isn't looking that confident when it comes to that. So this could be the case with so many people that are yearning to even get into a situation where they get a mortgage, and the reality then that the mortgage is just drowning many people. If you think as well that that is the foundation to most people's payments, outgoings each month, the mortgage or the rent payment, how can then people feel confident when other necessities like food and fuel are so expensive to feel there's anything left in the bank to spend? So it's going to help the economy, is going to help the general public if the way that we look at our housing situation in the UK is just clearly a high agenda point for any party thinking of running this country, because so much of it just doesn't make sense. We need more affordable housing, and we need different ways to be able to assess whether people can afford that or not.
Okay, let's move on. Back to the Observer, Janelle, because this is quite an interesting one, isn't it? Higher earners to pay less for degrees, and this will be over nurses, teachers. Talk to us about that.
So they're doing some reform around student loans, and it needs reform, but I'm not sure this reform is the right way to go. Someone said this is the opposite of levelling up. I think it's actually pushing people down. So the way that it will work is the way it's always worked is you pay it off via how much you get paid. So that is advantageous, of course, to people who earn more money. They can pay it off sooner. But the way that they do the interest, you know, when you take a student loan, and I took one for my undergraduate, when you're getting that loan, you know, you hear all this, it's low interest and all of that kind of stuff. But at 9% interest, if you're not earning that much money, it's going to take you longer to pay it off. So what they're saying is that if you're a nurse or in a lower income band, you would pay back 63,100 over your student loan. Whereas if you're in a higher you would only pay back 55,000. Now, that is much more substantially, proportionately to what you're earning. And this is where I wish things like the government would look at the round at things like nurses' pay, because when you talk about loans in this way and how it would be for a nurse to pay it back, plus the fact they're not going to get pay rises, why it becomes disadvantage to yourself to take a career option like that. So I think if the government really want to fix a lot of these things long term, I think looking at student loan reform in a better way is going to be important to ensure that going to university pays, because for some roles that we need, you have to go to university. Okay. There's no choice, so I hope they look at it again.
I'm going to squeeze this one in, ladies. Did you watch Eurovision last night? You did. Oh, no, Janelle didn't. Oh, Kate, we'll talk to you then about this one in, I think it's the Mail, isn't it? And it was the Princess of Wales and her kind of surprise piano segment in the opening sequence. What did you make of that?
So we had Princess of Wales, Catherine, in this surprise cameo role in what was the introduction for the Eurovision. It wasn't live. It was beautifully done, but it was a collaboration between the Ukraine. And I've noticed that Janelle and I wear the Ukraine colours this morning.
You are?
So, cats off there. We are, because obviously the Ukraine entry won last year. So it was their Kalisha Orchestra and the music from last year, a track called Stefania, where we saw Andrew Lloyd Webber, Joss Ryder, Sam Ryder, Joss Stone, Miss Banks, all collaborating. It worked beautifully. But, you know, quick few hats off. Liverpool, amazing, well done. UK, we need this type of thing. We've had 2 major events in a week and we've pulled them off so well. And my goodness,
it was one.